everybody, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some of the U.S. tax law changes that will affect some hobbyists, including those of us in the doll collecting community. Now, if you're new to my channel and you've never been here before, this is a doll collecting channel, so this is kind of going to revolve around doll collecting. However, it could be very applicable to other sorts of hobbies and collections as well. Now, all that being said, I need to give you a big disclaimer. I am a CPA, which means Certified Public Accountant. However, I do not do taxes. I'm not a tax accountant. The only taxes I do are my own taxes. I am a corporate treasurer, so my expertise lies in corporate treasury, which is totally different than taxes. However, I do have some expertise in the area of tax, so what I wanted to do is give you guys kind of a springboard to learn some information, and then if you have questions about your own specific taxes, you can reach out to a CPA in your area for additional guidance. I obviously cannot give you that guidance, and you should not use this video as the be-all, end-all to what you decide to do for your taxes, because everybody's tax situation is different. Now, all that being said, let's kind of get right into it, and I'm going to help break down the changes and what the law is and some things you can do to help minimize your own tax impact. So the big change is that in section 9674, they have added a new provision, and here's that provision. This provision lowers and modifies the threshold below which a third-party settlement organization is not required to report payments to participants in its network. So basically what this is saying is that PayPal, eBay, Etsy, etc., they are going to have to issue a 1099-K form to anybody who receives $600 or more, regardless of the number of transactions. And that's going to start in January of 2022. So you will receive that 1099-K at the end of January or in February of 2023 for your 2022 tax filings. Now, let's talk about that. You always were supposed to report any income that you receive through PayPal, eBay, or Etsy. But if you were under the threshold of $20,000 and 200 transactions, they didn't 1099 you, and so you really didn't have to report it. You were supposed to, but you didn't have to. I like to use the analogy of speeding. You're supposed to go the speed limit, but you know, not everybody does, and it only sucks when you get caught, right? When you get pulled over and you get that ticket. It's the same thing with this sort of thing. If the IRS audits you and you haven't been doing this already, you will be in trouble because the law itself has not changed. The tax law itself has not changed. They're adding this provision where these sites are now going to 1099 you. So down further in the provision, it says, for example, an individual who is registered for a mobile payment service and uses such a service to reimburse friends or relatives for expenses, or on occasion sells a used item to another person, would not be engaging in transactions that are subject to reporting requirements. That is very vague in my opinion, because on occasion sells a used item to another person. I sell used dolls all the time, but often just one sale is above that $600 threshold. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we continue through here. But if the individual were to register for the purposes of engaging in commercial transactions, the mobile payment service would be required to report under the provision. Most likely, if you are registered with PayPal, eBay, Etsy, one of these places, you have agreed to one of these agreements like that. So you're going to fall under this $600 threshold. Again, you've always been obligated to report this, but not everybody has. So let's look at what qualifies as actual income. So you need to report your income on your 1040 form. So what qualifies as income? So let's look at all this stuff. This is from the IRS publication 525. Activity not for profit. You must include on your return income from an activity from which you don't expect to make a profit. An example of this type of activity is a hobby you operate mostly for recreation and pleasure. Deductions for expenses related to the activity are limited. there are actually no deductions for expenses. And that law is the one that everybody should have been worried about, which was passed as of the 2018 tax year. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Hobby losses. So let's look at hobby losses or hobby expenses, either one. Losses from a hobby aren't deductible from other income. A hobby is an activity from which you don't expect to make a profit. Hobby expenses are the same thing. You used to be able to, prior to 2018, you used to be able to deduct hobby expenses from hobby income and they could offset each other. Maybe not deduct, but offset. You can't do that anymore. So hold that thought. Let's also look at sale of personal items. If you sold an item you own for personal use, such as a car, refrigerator, furniture, stereo, jewelry, or silverware, your gain is taxable as a capital gain. Report it as explained in the instructions for Schedule D. However, if you sold an item you held for investment, such as gold or silver bullion, coins, or gems, any gain is taxable as a capital gain and any loss is deductible as a capital loss. If the IRS comes to audit you, they're really probably not going to look at a doll collection as an item that you bought for investment. It's going to be more of a personal item. Coins, gold bars, silver bars, those things people obviously think that you bought it for investment. Dolls are not necessarily going to think so. So this is a personal item that you're going to be selling. So sold goods are not taxable as income if you're selling a used personal item for less than the original value. If you sell it or flip it for more than the original cost, you must report the income. If you've had it for more than a year, this is a long-term capital gain. If you've had it less than a year, this is a short-term capital gain and it's taxed at regular income tax rates. So what does all that mean? I think it'll be easier if we just look at a couple of examples to help you guys kind of understand what all this means and kind of help you understand how you might want to start keeping records. For example, this year, I purchased a Zwerg doll for $245 back in 2018. This year, I sold her for $220. Even though I got $220 into my PayPal account and that would be reported on a 1099-K form, that is actually not income to me. I don't owe any taxes on this because there was no gain. That is not income. I have the receipts from when I purchased her back in 2018. That part's important because if you ever get audited by the IRS, you have to prove that you took a loss on that item. You have to prove that that was not income to you and that there was no gain. So you really want to start keeping up with your receipts. Luckily, most of us do our transactions online now and you can do a quick email search and find that stuff. Another good thing to do is use Google Sheets. Google Sheets is free to use. All you got to do is sign up for an account with Google or Gmail or Google Drive, and you can keep your records there. Totally free to use. Let's look at another example where we have a gain. Now, this is a hypothetical example. So, hypothetically, I paid $14.95 for this cuckoo painted by the Poupées sisters. Because they're not painting dolls at this time, as I talked about in my unboxing that I did a couple days ago, I feel confident that I could sell her for a little bit more than what I paid. So let's say I sold her for $1,600. My gain would then be $105 on the doll. Now, if I had her for more than a year, so in order to qualify for the capital gains tax, you have to have had it for more than a year. So if I had her for more than a year, I would be taxed about $15 on that $105 because capital gains tax is 15% for most people. For most people, the capital gains tax rate, 15%, is actually going to be better than your income tax rate. It's much better than my income tax rate. So if you want to keep up with that stuff, and if you can, if you're going to sell a doll for more than you paid for it, you want to try to wait that year out so that you'll be taxed less on it. If you have not had the doll longer than a year, if you've had it less than a year, that's a short-term capital gain, and it's going to be taxed at your regular income tax rate, which the income tax brackets go all the way up to, I think, 39.5%. So you know, it's whatever, however much your tax rate is, you know, when you do your income taxes, that's what you would be taxed on that $100. For most people, that's going to be above that 15% capital gains tax. So if you have it less than a year, they look at that as like a short-term capital gain, and you've got to pay your regular income tax on it. So again, record keeping is super important. Dates are important. You know, all that kind of stuff is very important. Highly recommend Google Sheets to keep up with all this stuff. So now let's kind of talk about where we kind of got messed up as hobbyists for having to report this stuff, or having to have report hobby income. We've always had to report it, but with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that eliminated the ability to offset hobby income with hobby expenses or losses. So for example, in the past year, I had hobby income because I had income from YouTube. YouTube sent me a 1099K. And I bought a camera and a microphone in the same year. The cost of my camera and the cost of my microphone exceeded the amount of income that I received from YouTube last year. But I could not offset that income with those items because they got rid of all the miscellaneous itemized deductions, and the hobby expenses and hobby losses used to be part of that. So now you can't even offset any income you get, like the income I get from YouTube. I cannot offset that with any expenses that I have for the channel. But there's some ways around that. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So that's the one where I feel like people should have really been a little bit more worried if you were really looking at your taxes and thinking about stuff like that. However, with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the individual deductions, the standard deduction went up, so that kind of helps offset some of that. But if you're really big in the hobby and you're buying and selling a lot, you know, that might have hurt you. So moving on, how can we minimize our tax impact? So all this new rules, you know, again, it really hasn't changed as far as this year goes. It's just going to be reported now. And so you've got to mind your P's and Q's a little bit more, because Uncle Sam wants his cut. And Cousin Bob at the state level probably wants his too. So you need to make sure you've got records of everything. So how can you minimize your tax impact? So the first way is sell everything for less or for the same amount as what you paid. And to do that, you know, you need to keep excellent records, because if you're doing that, you have no income to report. You didn't make any money. You sold the doll for exactly what you paid for it. There is no income to report. You did not make money off that sale. But in order to argue that in the event of an audit, you've got to have receipts and show, hey, I paid this and this is what I received, and your PayPal fees, you know, that comes out of that, all that kind of stuff. So friends and family payments. When we looked at the explanation of the provision, it said personal payments will not be reported. So you should still be reporting, because I've seen a lot of people say this in different forums. Oh, well, we can just all do friends and family and it's not going to get reported on a 1099K, which I never recommend paying friends and family unless it's someone you know and trust and someone that you've done business with before in the past. However, friends and family payments are not going to be reported on your 1099K. Here's an idea that I really like. If you're going to sell a doll and you're going to sell it for $200 more than what you paid, include some clothing, some wigs, some shoes, anything that could help offset the gain on the doll. So for example, I have an entire door full of wigs behind me. Some of those wigs I paid $30, $40 for. I barely use them anymore. I can throw them in with the doll, but because I originally paid $30 for that wig, that's, you know, that offsets the gain on the doll. So I might be selling the doll for $200 more, but if I'm including a $30 wig, it's now no longer $200 more, it's $170 more. Same thing with clothes. You know, used wigs I have found are very hard to sell, and some used clothing is too. So if you have a bunch of clothes, if you have a nice outfit that you paid $50 for, but you know you're not going to be able to resell it, throw it in with the doll. And that brings your gain down even more, because it's a used item and you're essentially losing money on it, or you're not getting back you're not making a gain on those items. So that's one way that you can help offset your gain when selling a doll, is include accessories, anything that you have that you know what you paid for, kind of put that in there to bring that gain down, if that makes sense. Now here's the next thing, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm kind of going to explain how I'm going to do it, is structure your hobby as a business. And we're going to talk about more about that in a second, but you can, if you're actively trying to make money with the doll collecting hobby, which at this point, I kind of am. I'm trying to improve my YouTube videos. I'm trying to post content a lot. I spend a lot of time on it. I've started a Patreon. There's a lot of different things that I've done in the interest of earning money and earning income. So let's look at that, because the IRS is going to be like, wait a second, are you doing this for fun or are you doing it as a business? So these questions are directly from the IRS. So this is how can you determine if you qualify as a hobby or business. You need to take into account all the facts and circumstances with respect to the activity. A hobby activity is an activity not done for profit. This includes activities done mainly for sport, recreation, or pleasure. No one factor alone is decisive. So, the first one, do you carry on the activity in a business-like manner and maintain complete and accurate books and records? Back to the Google spreadsheets. If you have a sheet where you have everything and your books are accurate and your records are accurate, that right there gives you business credibility, because you are maintaining these records, and that gives you some legitimacy if you want to later say that your hobby was a business. Whether you have personal motives in carrying on the activity. Whether the time and effort you put into the activity indicate that you intend to make it profitable. I put a lot of time into my YouTube channel, into my Instagram, into those sorts of things. So I would say that definitely the time and effort I put forth indicate that I intend to make it profitable. Whether you depend on income from the activity for your livelihood. I do not depend on my YouTube income for my livelihood. I have a day job, but what I would like, the goal one day, is to, of course, be able to make a living from doing doll-related things. Isn't that everybody's idea, is to be able to live the dream and do what you love every day for a job? So although it's not my livelihood now, it could be in the future, and that's, part of the goal of doing this. Whether your losses are due to circumstances beyond your control or are normal in the startup phase of your business. So the main thing the IRS is trying to do, and this kind of came from equestrian type activities, is that they don't want people taking advantage and saying that they have all these losses and just offsetting all their income and not paying any taxes. And so that's why they even had to start this whole hobby tax business. But anyway, as doll collectors, you're not going to have tons and tons of losses. Well, you might. We like to say, a friend of mine and I like to say, you win some and you lose some. Some dolls, you can hardly give them away, and then some dolls just, they appreciate so much and you're able to resell them for a high price. Whether you or your advisors have the knowledge needed to carry on the activity as a successful business. I feel like I have enough knowledge about dolls and the doll community that my YouTube channel can be successful as a business. Whether you are successful in making a profit in similar activities in the past. So, I've kind of been slowly working on this all my life, and I, went and I got an MBA, so it's kind of a business, and that's a business degree. And, again, you go back up and they say no one factor alone is decisive. You don't have to meet all these criteria, but if you look at the criteria and you meet some of them, you could make the argument in an audit that you are doing, your collection is a business activity for you. If you're buying and flipping, to try to make money, you could do it that way. Whether the activity makes a profit in some years and how much profit it makes, because they don't like, the previous law was that, it's considered a business if 3 out of 5 years you make a profit. But even some businesses don't make a profit 5 out of 5 years. or whether you can expect to make a future profit from the appreciation of the assets used in the activity. So what are assets? Assets are your dolls. You know, are you expecting to make future money off your dolls? For me, when I'm talking about my YouTube channel, my assets are my subscribers, the brand that I've built, you know, the community that we've built together here. That is the assets. A lot of times in accounting, that'll be referred to as goodwill. It's an intangible asset, but it's a very important asset, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of you guys watching me every day. I mean, I would still probably be making videos because I like doing it, but I wouldn't be making any money doing it if you guys didn't enjoy them and watch them. So anyway, you have to look at these questions for yourself, and you have to decide, do these things apply to you? You know, are you doing enough business with your hobby that you could actually, you know, kind of say it is a business? So you have to make that distinction for yourself to see if you can do that. Now, if you decide you want to go the business route, and this is a question I get a lot, do I need to register as an LLC to be a business? You don't have to. You can be a sole proprietorship, which is the path that I've chosen. You use your own social security number for that. You report your income and your expenses on Schedule C, and you don't need to do anything special other than that. That's all you do, and you just report it on your regular taxes, your regular individual income taxes. If you want to register as an LLC, that is a limited liability company. The reason that people register for LLCs is that it limits your personal liability for business debts. So for example, if I took out a $30,000 loan to build a YouTube studio, and then that I couldn't pay my loan, they could come take my house, or they could put a lien against my house if I didn't have it registered as an LLC. Luckily, I don't spend more money than I have. I'm not borrowing any money to do this. You know, everything I'm building slowly. It also protects your personal assets if something goes wrong, if there's a lawsuit. So if for some reason there were a lawsuit against your company, they can, and you're a sole proprietorship, they can again take your house if a court rules that, you know, there are punitive damages. But if it's an LLC, they can only go after the assets of the business. So I honestly, in doll collecting, I can't think of a lot of scenarios. Now, if you're a doll maker, yes, most doll makers are registered as LLCs, and there's good reason for that. In case, like, for example, a hand comes loose off a doll and a child chokes on it, and the parent, you know, files a lawsuit, you know, then that person, that artist's assets wouldn't be up for grabs, I guess, like legally speaking. But if you do an LLC, you need to register for an LLC, which costs money. I don't know how much. It depends. Every state is different. And you'll have to file a separate tax return for that. So having an LLC does complicate things. That's why I've chosen not to do it. I'm just going to maintain a sole proprietorship, at least for now. And that is how I'm going to move forward, starting with this tax year, the tax year 2021. Last year, I reported my income as a hobby, but this year, I am going to do it as a business, because I do treat my YouTube channel as a business. I put a lot of time and effort into it. I invest a lot of my own personal money into it, and the hope is that one day I'll be able to do dolls 24/7. Well, not 24/7. Nobody wants to work that much. I want a 40-hour-a-week doll job, which is almost what I spend on dolls now anyway. But, guys, I hope that made sense to you. It's a lot of, I know if you're not in the U.S., I mean, and you made it this far, congratulations, because you just learned a whole bunch of stuff that you probably didn't want to know at all. But again, you know, this is just kind of how the law is broken down, and the things that you can do to kind of help offset some of that tax, some of the income you make from selling dolls. Because the bottom line is that in this hobby, we buy and sell dolls all the time. I have to buy dolls. I mean, I have to sell dolls. I have to buy dolls too, but I have to sell dolls to buy new dolls. That happens, you know, and I have to sell dolls because look at this room. It's slam full of dolls. I can't just keep buying dolls and just throw them in the floor. I have to have space to put them in. And so we all have to do that. We all have to sell dolls in order to buy new dolls. And if you just keep good records, And if you have gains, your gains are probably not going to be all that much because there aren't many dolls. There are some. If you watched one of my regrets or my one of my mistakes videos about the Herod's Anna and Elsa dolls that were like $750 and they were selling for $6,000 on eBay, that would be a huge gain, right? But most dolls aren't going to sell in excess of that much of their original price. You know, on a good day, I think the most you might make on a doll is $400 or $500. And so as long as you have good records, you will only be taxed on the gain portion of that doll. So just make sure your records are good. And you can take, if you want to, take your records to a local CPA that's in your area that knows your state laws and things like that. And if you have those records, they'll be able to go through them. It'll be an easy breezy thing for them, and you'll be right with the law and you'll be right with Uncle Sam, and they won't come after you. What are your odds of being audited? They're probably very low, to be perfectly honest. I have always heard, and we always heard in college, and also when I was taking all my CPA courses, that one of the things that they one of the red flags to get individuals audited for is if they try to write off office space as an expense. I don't know whether that's true or not, but anyway, I don't know anybody personally that's ever been audited. Does that mean that you can kind of just do what you want though? You know, I wouldn't. For me, ethically as a CPA, it's very important that my taxes are correct and that they're whole and complete and that I'm not omitting income. But your likelihood of getting audited is low, but you do need to hold on to your records. So make sure you have all of your records, and, you know, make sure you investigate things for yourself. But I really, really hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope that it was helpful. Like I said, if you made it this far, thank you. Please feel free to share this video with anybody that you think it would benefit. Like I said, it's not only applicable to dolls. It can be applicable to other areas as well, especially collectible toys, that sort of thing. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up because that really helps my channel. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed, and we will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. I want to say a huge thank you to my patrons from Patreon: Lindsay S., Leah W., Jenny C., Doreen Z., Janice H., Mercedes W., Angela E., Cindy K., Bear Sunflower, and Diane B. Thank you so much for helping support the goals of the MPD community and supporting this channel. You can check the description box of this video to see how you can help support this channel through Patreon. Thank you.